forward, so that would be the moral endeavor, is to move away from the bad and towards the good.
Yeah, insofar as we understand which way is up, yes.
Yes.
The basic claim is that we can be right or wrong with respect to our beliefs there.
True. We don't necessarily know how to do that in an unerring manner, and we could subject that to approximation correction along the way, and we should, but we can outline the broad scheme, which is progress away from hell towards something that's positive.
What? Exactly. No, we can't. What's the basis for any of that? Did you notice what they did? And by the way, I'm noticing, this is what we're going to start doing tag with this. We're going to use this little simple chart for the uneducated, for the masses, for the atheists out there, for the pseuds. We're going to have this simple chart. How many times have we heard in this discussion appeals to the true versus the false, the good versus bad? Well, quite a bit. And Peterson's going into it right now. So I credit him for going to this, but no justification for these claims.
Okay, so I would say that there's an implicit claim in that you should sacrifice everything in you that isn't serving that to that. And I would say that that's essentially the same claim that's made in Christianity.
Well, again, that is I understand the...
Okay, I'll kind of give I'll give Peterson a little bit of credit right here. I wish he had said that there's a difference between human sacrifice and self-sacrifice. I mean, that's two different things, and we're conflating these things, first of all. I'll give him credit for, he's kind of in an indirect way raising this question. So he gets a point for that.
Impulse to up-level these barbaric, ignorance-derived beliefs, right, to something that is morally, that is interesting and palatable in the current context. And
by the way, up-leveling, that's appealing to this, value judgments, which, and didn't he say in the first part, I seem to remember that he said something in the first part that we know that existence, if it's miserable, is just hell. And so that might be why Peterson is saying we want to get past living in hell to a better situation. Value judgments. Okay. So how do we up-level Sam?
Do that. My concern there is you can do that with everything. I mean, you could do it with witchcraft. Why not do the exact same thing you're doing with religion to the history of witchcraft? Witchcraft is as well
modern
subscribed.
Witches would do that. So that's a perfectly valid
right,
criticism.
That should be of concern. I mean, their effects are disastrous, or have been disastrous, or will likely be, even if good in certain circumstances, will likely be disastrous in the future. And then we shouldn't be hostage to these ancient memes. We shouldn't have to figure out how to make the most of the worst idea that anyone's ever had, which is maybe you should sacrifice your firstborn child to a being you've never...
So again, biblical religion does not teach that you sacrifice your firstborn children to God. Like, what is he talking about? I mean, there is no Christian body that exists, so-called Christian body, believes or has ever taught that you sacrifice your firstborn to God. By the way, the story in Judges is not about human sacrifice either. James Jordan has a good chapter in his Judges book on the story of, is it Jephthah? Is it his daughter? The rash vow that he makes is very similar to the way that Eli is dedicated as a child to the temple, right? And so there were children could be dedicated to the temple service in the Old Testament. So the vow of sacrificing does not always necessitate a literal human sacrifice, right? Just in the same way as that a virgin in our day, right? You can become a monastic. That's a form of human sacrifice, right? Doesn't mean you're literally chopped up on an altar. This is ridiculous. But anyway, they don't know any of that. But
hold on, Sam. I want to hold your feet to the fire here a little bit. 2 points. One, interesting observation. When you presented the example, so on your podcast I had argued that believing that porcupines can throw their quills might protect you from a porcupine that might wheel around even though porcupines can't throw their quills. Your listener sent the better example, which was all guns are loaded. When you presented it, you didn't say all guns are loaded.
Well,
you said treat all guns as if they are loaded, which is, I think, the same reflex that you have faced with any metaphorical truth, which is that it can always be unpacked.
But actually, that's the way Jordan talks about believing in God as well.
Right.
Well, that is true. Jordan talks about believing in God as a metaphor, as if God exists, ignoring the question of whether he actually exists. I mean, how are people so dumb as to fall for this as a good argument? I'm sorry, it's just, this is a really stupid argument. And I'm not saying Jordan Peterson is stupid. I think he's a very intelligent man. But as an argument, this is just so bad. And I would have to even give credit to the atheist for saying that, so you want me to accept that the metaphorical idea of God is going to help me and I can live as if God exists and totally forget the question of whether God exists. I mean, this is just like bizarre. Like, this is a terrible argument. But that's where you're forced if you don't want to talk about metaphysics. And that's why Jordan Peterson is basically forced into this pragmatic psychotheology argument that God is this concept which will help you be a better version of you, right? And it's God as a technology, exactly as we described. And so I actually give a point to Sam Harris right here because this is a terrible argument.
And actually, so this is. But then, if we take something like you say, all right, sacrifice of children is abhorrent. Let's say it is. And then you say,
I mean, we could think of all the kinds of ways to refute this to show it's a bad argument. Like, so I'm only basically accepting an abstract idea of a deity to help me live better or to give values. But if I'm going to do that, I could pick any kind of abstracted deity I want that already conforms with my presuppositions about what I think is better. Maybe let's say I am a theistic Satanist. Maybe it helps me live better because I have order, I have rituals, and yeah, I mean, I'm not invoking Jesus, but I believe in one God. It just happens to be Satan, and it's a very empowering, self-empowering faith. I'm able to worship myself. I'm able to do what I want. I have structure in my life such that I can get all the stuff, all the gimmies and the me's that I want. I deserve an Escalade, right? So, according to Jordan Peterson's definition or argument here, you could insert any kind of deity in that you want, and I guess that's where he was going with the witchcraft example, right? Like, well, I mean, if it's just a matter of inserting whatever deity I want to help me live better according to some self-help abstract, right? And that's, by the way, that's exactly what Tate says about God too, right? God is the highest version of yourself that makes you better, some bullshit he says. I mean, I can't believe people think these are actually good arguments. I mean, it's just mind-boggling to me. It should be so obvious that these are just ridiculous arguments, but people are idiots and they think these are good arguments, I guess. I don't know what else to say.
Well, Christians, in fact, have very positive outgrowths, though not literal, the idea that someone would have sacrificed their own child for the benefit of everybody else not to have to. That idea might engender a large amount of good work that would result, as Jordan is pointing out.
Let me just concede the hardest case for me, I mean, which I did up top, just in defining.
Yeah, but doesn't Sam Harris believe in abortion? I mean, so like, does he really not believe in human sacrifice, or that sacrificing your firstborn child is the worst imaginable act, like he said earlier? Oh, but wait a minute, you believe in, you're a supporter of pro-choice. So again, you don't really believe that. You're just arbitrarily choosing which things you argue for and believe depending upon the moment.
So here's another situation, because we have to remember what kind of catastrophic past we emerged from and how much privation ruled the world prior to 1895, essentially. And certainly the farther back you go, the more bloody and horrible it was. I mean, how often do you think it was necessary, and this is not obviously something I'm in favor of, and this is also one of these situations where we get to play with ideas that we might not otherwise play with. How often do you think it was necessary for people in the past who had absolutely no access to birth control and who didn't have enough food to sacrifice a child for the survival of their family? I mean, God only knows, and that's, but that's worth thinking about. It's like, life is unbelievably cruel and difficult. And one of the problems that comes when you discover the future is that you might have to make the most painful of sacrifices. And lots of archaic people do this sort of thing. They do that with their elderly.
So now we're talking about alive territory, right? Remember when the soccer team crashes and they got to eat each other? But I mean, how often does this actually happen? I mean, okay, we have a couple stories in the Bible where people were, Israel was walled up and they ended up cooking the youth. But I mean, this is not a common thing, but even still, but so the sacrifice of the youth for second breakfast? I mean, I just don't understand what is this is the maybe they're all drunk. Did they just drink before this meeting and come up with just a bunch of crazy stories? That beforehand they were like, look, this tonight, let's just get wacky with it. Let's just get freaking out there, dude. Let's just tell some crazy stories. Let's use some crazy analogies of guns and mobsters giving $1 million for empty gun gangs at the casino. I mean, I don't know what's going on.
You see echoes of child sacrifice at the beginning, but what happens is the sacrificial notion gets increasingly psychologized as the story progresses. So, you see that transition with Abraham and Isaac, where the child sacrifice is actually forbidden, although previously demanded by God. And then you also...
What? Not true. Total bullshit. So he was almost finally making a good point there, that the purpose of the Genesis Abraham story and Isaac is to forbid it. But he said that although God had previously required it, what are you talking about? God didn't require human sacrifice. What? Total malarkey. What are you talking about? And this whole debate has been premised on assuming that God did require human sacrifice. No, he didn't. Where are they getting this from?
Laid out in the substitution of the circumcision for the idea of sacrifice itself. And then what seems to happen, I'm trying to figure out how these ideas develop psychologically from their behavioral underpinnings, is that eventually...
Well, that's what I'm saying. Why is this dude lecturing on Genesis and Exodus, and millions of people are watching this, and he doesn't even know the basics? Like, what is he talking about? I mean, just to lecture on these things, being completely ignorant of... I mean, I get, okay, so, if you don't believe in Christianity, I understand you might still want to do a literary analysis or reading of the Bible. If you go to college, you'll have like literary reading of the Bible courses or whatever. I understand why people do that in academia, but I would still want to know, the theology behind it, right? And whether Jewish or Christian, I would at least want to know what they thought about the passages, not just my psychotheology reading of the Bible.
It becomes psychologized completely, so you can say, well...
I mean, it'd be like, imagine me going and debating the Muslims and not caring what the Muslims think about the Quran. It's just, I read the Quran and it's like my personal feelings about it, right? I mean, nobody would buy that. It's not a good argument. It's not a good approach to do that. So, again, I just no idea where he's getting these ideas.